when you get in the ring, it's the loneliest place on the planet. And then after your fight, no matter if you win or lose, it is the loneliest place ever. That loneliness I try to fill with a bunch of stuff because I'm trying to experience that same emotional high that you get when you fight. Everything I did was intentional. Everything had purpose. Everything was to funnel towards that one goal in mind. After a fight was over, it was difficult because I didn't have that same focus or intention. It's like a big emotional void. It's actually difficult to explain because it's one of those unique things as a fighter that I just dealt with it. The hardest thing in the world is, from the exterior, when somebody looks at somebody that's a professional athlete or a fighter, they don't consider all these other factors. They just look at, oh my God, he won the championship. Oh my God, he's the best in the world. There's a cost that comes with it. And at times it was more than I wanted to pay. Like considering everything, would I change anything? And it's like, no, because it wouldn't have made me the person I am, right? And it wouldn't have put me in this position where I'm sitting here and I'm able to, tell somebody about what happened, what my experience was. So much of my identity was tied up in being a fighter. What it took me forever to resolve. It sounds simple to say it, but it's complex. Fighting is what I did. It's not who I am. But to untangle that, and it took a lot of trial and error. Today, the person that I've become is, my whole thing is connection. I value connection more than objects or things. Connection with people. It's finding in my sphere of people that I have, people that I'm connected with. And that's the most important thing to me in the world. I was an ultra competitive, extremely intentional athlete. I felt like I was trying to raise everybody around me up. And if you weren't on board with it, I had no patience, no tolerance for you. Looking back, there's probably 50 different ways to do it. I just did it the way that I thought was right. I didn't know what it was like to be a professional athlete. There wasn't a standard of what like a mixed martial artist was. Like, how do you show up in interviews? How do you show up when you're in the ring? How do you show up after you win or lose? I look back on it and going, I was selfish. I was self-centered, really just operated in a way where I was going to do what I was going to do regardless of the consequences of it. Through elementary school and all that, I just felt less than. It's this crazy experience. Athletically, it was the first time that I felt like I had control over something. I always walked around with the feeling that I was just less from where I grew up in Northwest Ohio and, Puerto Rican kid in predominantly white school. Felt like I was just trying to make myself equal. I didn't even want to be better than, just equal to. It's just feeling like I was less than, for the majority of my life, that I had to overachieve to feel equal to. Like, this is going to sound silly, but it was so influential. It's like in, I don't know, second or third grade, they classified kids and as a slow reader or a fast reader. So the fast readers were the red roosters and slow readers were the blue cows. And that was the first labeling that I got. That stuck with me. And so I only lived up to being just this blue cow slow reader. And it just this stigma of feeling like I was just intellectually and superior to everybody around me. So I had to work harder when I found something that I could be better than you at. And so that's like the second that I felt that from athletics, from baseball or football or wrestling or whatever it was, that was my release. You're not going to think less of me when I get on a baseball field or get on a football field and kick the crap out of you. It was my senior year in high school, and my high school's been around since the 1930s. And in wrestling, they've only had one state champion in wrestling, which was me. And I put so much pressure on myself to repeat as a senior, and it was terrible. I just had miserable, didn't enjoy. It's like the joy of what I was doing was gone because there's just this weight that was put on me. It was put on me by myself. It wasn't like a wrestling coach or the athletic director or anything. It was, the expectation that I built in myself. And again, it's getting getting in the results instead of getting to the actions. It's back to that again, right? And I was so concerned about the results that I forgot it takes all these actions to get there, and without all these actions, it's like, it's just never going to happen. So fighting in the UFC, that was one thing, but fighting in Japan was like a completely different level. Culturally, they understood it better than American fans did. Live venues were huge, and what I didn't understand, Japanese culture is built primarily on these implied rules. You're supposed to win, right? Because you're the favorite. It's not like you can have an off day, or anything. And they were paying me at the time in the industry. They were paying me really, really well. So immediately, once I got what was going on, like the whole vibe of what was going on, I kicked into this, like, I don't want to let them down. From the outside looking in, it's sometimes hard for everybody to understand, like, internally what I'm fighting with. So in Japan's when that kind of popped up again. That whole persona of the Smashing Machine just allowed me to not feel those feelings of insecurity and fear and doubt less than, probably allowed me to do more than probably I would have done. In Japan, they almost looked at it like it was a superhero, right? And so it's like, I'm a human being. A lot of it was I just felt like I couldn't take a moment to pause. When they asked me to fight, I had to say yes. Didn't matter what the event was, didn't matter who the opponent was, whether it was in alignment with what I was trying to accomplish or not. It built a lot of resentment through that process, a ton of resentment. I had a bone spur break off in my elbow, and it was actually about the size of a cloker. And sparring one day, and loose body gets lodged in the joint, and I can't get my elbow to straighten out. And it's finally like shaking at the point. Go to the doctor. I'm scheduled to fight, and I go, I'm not fighting. And it was this whole internalizing guilt that I had. To that point, I had probably 5 or 6 fights in a row that it didn't last more than a couple minutes. I think at that moment, it just stopped becoming anything that was fun. Any kind of satisfaction that I got from it before just didn't seem to be there. As my son started getting older and his friends around him became more aware of what I did for a living, he became more aware. He's always said, he's always just looked at me as his dad. I've talked to him about, he doesn't have to be in my shadow in any capacity. It's like, what I did is what I did. It's so minimal in the bigger picture of like who I am. I know what it was like me growing up and having a mother that was very domineering. I mean, if she asked you to do something, she wasn't going to ask twice. I felt like I wrestled for her most of my life, and I didn't want my son to feel like that. I didn't want to be that overbearing parent that pushed and put the gas, So when my son would start something, I said, one rule, just finish it and let him kind of pick and choose what he wanted to do. And him looking back on it, just like, Dad, I wish you would have been a little bit harder on me. I think choosing the Smashing Machine, the mirror to that is not feeling like I was living up to being the Smashing Machine, which is a persona, right? I think that did more damage to me than anything else. Get to a point where I can't live up to that expectation, and it crippled me inside. And the only way I know how to deal with it was drugs and alcohol. So I've been sober now 7 years. I was so health conscious when I fought, right? And then to lose all that, to not be on top of my health, to just really go completely polar opposite that. So when I got sober, I said as a mandate, I'm going to get back on top of my health, but in a way that makes sense to me. Looking through my whole entire life, it's like, American medicine's good for some things, but not all things. Through the last 5 years, the alternative therapies and alternative methods and different thinking, I've been more open to it than I've ever been in my entire life. And so I ended up crossing paths with Jay Glazer. I ended up running into Jordan, and Jordan had just met Jay. It was this whole cross path, and as I went through the process of the film and all the press and everything, Jordan sent me a package right before I did the Joe Rogan show. And he said, hey, listen, just try this combination of things. And I was like, okay. And so I have this picture of like all these patches on my forearms as I'm getting ready to go on the Rogan show. And I said at that moment, even if in that moment it was psychosomatic or psychological, it didn't matter, because going into that moment, I had just this zen. It was awesome. I called Jordan. I'm like, can you send me some more passages? You know, I'm interested. Understanding just in a capacity is like, it's beautiful how this is all come to fruition. I was trying to manage things with alcohol and drugs at the time, and it just got to a moment where everything just stopped working. You know, when that happened to me, it's like this just open wound of emotions that is untreated. And, you know, there's no escaping it. I mean, there's no running from you. I mean, the saying is, you know, wherever you go, there you are. It was difficult because there was a lot of disappointment, you know, that I had myself, that I got myself in the situation I got myself in. I put pressure on myself. And for me, the saying was, you know, my best asset was my availability. Whatever I needed to do training wise to get through training camp and get in the ring and compete was primary over everything else. You know, so the first time that I, you know, made that compromise to go through, you know, practice where I had taken opiates before, got in and started sparring, and then it became like one time, then two times, then three times. And then, you know, I could work myself through an injury and still continue to train, you know, what I thought was at a high level, even though I had compromised so much stuff in that process. If I sat and give you a list of everything that I've torn, you know, the amazing part is I've only broken one bone in my body. It's in my kicking foot, and I didn't even know I broke it. You know, but I've torn, ripped, pulled, stretched, just about every bone and ligament in my body. And, you know, some days, you know, I'd get up and it just was this agonizing battle I had to try to get myself motivated enough in that frame of mind where every part of my body hurt from my toes to the top of my head. You know, at one point I could address that on a day-to-day basis without compromising any morals or values or training judgments or anything like that. And it just got to a point where it was a quicker, easier way to, you know, to get in the medicine cabinet, take some opiates, to get to the gym, to get through the practice, and then to figure out, you know, how shitty I was going to feel afterward. You know, for me, it's the dogma that I get stuck in at the time where I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to communicate to somebody that, you know, what you see, the physical part of what you see is just a facade. It's just the front of like, hey, there's this dude underneath that doesn't know. I didn't ask for help. He doesn't know how to communicate to you that he's like, I'm all fucked up. You know, there's shit inside this, you know, it's a wreck, and then I'd ask for help. I mean, there's points through my career where realization that, you know, the path that I was on was just unsustainable, you know, but I just, you know, in the moment, when I'm in that moment, it doesn't appear that way. It's, you know, it's all the little lies that you tell yourself, you know, it's just to get through this, it's just to get through that, it's just to be ready for this, it's just to get this paycheck, it's to do, I mean, you tell yourself all kinds of stuff through that process. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, for me, I reached the point where it's like, you know, I was able to, you know, tell myself the truth that, like, you can't do this alone. You need help. You need something other than what you're doing. I could have asked anybody for help, but I don't think I would have been able to accept whatever remedy they had to offer, because I thought I still had all the solutions. I was getting this compound from Mexico. It's called Nuvane, and it was supposed to be like this. It was an opiate, synthetic opiate, and I started injecting it in me, and I remember specifically in time, like literally like standing where a garbage can and consciously making the decision whether I was going to throw this away or not, because I knew from that point going forward there was no turning back. Like, I had reached the point where I knew I was dependent. I didn't know anything about opiate addiction at the time. I didn't know, what it does to your body, what it does when you stop using it, what kind of withdrawals it creates. I didn't know that. And so, if you remember, standing there and just not being able to throw it in the trash, just not being able to. With my son, I think the big thing that just shattered me was I had no value in my word, what I said to him. Like, hey buddy, I'll come by on Tuesday and take you to lunch, or let's do this or let's do that. And there's no consistency of any of that. And so, with my son now, I'm very intentional what I say to him. My sobriety date, September 4th, 2018, it ends up being this point in time where September 3rd, 1996, when my mother passed away, and my son had said to me, hey, Dad, I know today's a really sad day for you. No, your mom passed away, but tomorrow would you stop drinking? I said, yeah. Kind of like it's just, I thought it was just going to be another empty, for whatever the reason, the next day I got up and things were a little bit different. And that day went by, and it was the first time that I hadn't drank probably in 10 years. The next day I got up and I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to do it another day. And it was another day. And then it was another. Addiction is just such a hard thing, because I was trying to fix internally what was going on with me with something externally. And it just never works. I'm not looking for zero pain. I mean, that world doesn't exist for me. It's like if I could take things down just a notch, it frees up so much of me to do so many other things in my life that I enjoy. I've discovered where I work best is I have foundation. Like, I build this foundation, and in that foundation of stuff, it has to be stuff that I know that works for me. Having Super Patch as part of the building block has been the process of me getting back on top of my health and allowing me to do stuff that I haven't been able to do in years. And so rewiring the machine for me right now, it's having that ability to be able to connect with people and having the ability to tell them a little bit about my story and connect emotionally with them. Like, my whole life has directed me and put me to this point for a reason. And it's to be able to give somebody the thing that at one point I had none of, which was hope. At one point I had to hang on second by second, minute by minute. I used to say, it's like, I just need to get through this second, this next second, and stringing together this, like, okay, I need to get through this minute, and then all of a sudden I got through a day. So I had to build these little incremental things in me, and that's part of rewiring myself right now, is taking advantage of everything that's available to me to get me cognitively, physically, and emotionally, present. I've always had this understanding that I was a creature of habit, right? Like, I like routines. But the crazy part is I like routines, but I don't like being told what to do. I've really gone about putting myself in a place where I have routines. I read in the morning, get my supplements, get, what I'm doing that morning, put the patch on, and that starts my day. It's been a complete saving grace to get back in a place where I have that kind of structure. It's like a safety net. Okay, I'm feeling this, I'm gonna put peace on, I'm gonna put joy on, I'm gonna put, whatever I know, and I'm in tune now with what's going on internally. Alcohol was it wasn't working anymore. That was the first decision that's the keystone part of everything else that makes everything else work, because it allowed me to get in touch with what's going on internally, what's going on emotionally, what's going on mentally, and to be able to address those issues. When it's boiled down to it, is, it's a relation to my son, is that I wanted to be better for him, right? And I wanted to be able to be there in a capacity that I had never been able to be there for, where he can actually depend on me, he trusts me. I never wanted to look at him and see the disappointment that he had in his eyes about what I was doing. I look back on this like fundamental and foundational. It's like, not that I'm living my life to please my son, but living my life that my son respects me. It's been really cool. I mean, I have just a relationship that I value above just about anything else in my life. It's actually beautiful. You know, a lot of where I got trapped is I got caught in this narrow window of like, this is the only way things are done. It's not condemning American medicine, but it's very narrow in its approach, and you know, it masked a lot of the things that were going on with me. It didn't fix them. I'm a crusader for myself, right? Like, I'm on a crusade to try to find the best things that are available to help fix, not mask, to fix the stuff that's going on with me. It's physiological, it's psychological, emotional, it's all these different aspects that I just have been asleep at the wheel with. And so, you know, for me, my crusade is to go, okay, what's out there, what's available, what's the best things that I can do that can help me in all those different aspects. Like I've said, all I need is just for things to just go down just a notch. If they go down just a notch, I'm good. I can go out and do whatever I want to do, right? But when they're up here and elevated, it's like, oh, because I'm open to stuff now. A friend of mine said, hey, why don't you try this? And this is where Super Patch came in. It came in to where I go, okay, I'll at this point, I'm looking for things that aren't traditional ways to approach stuff. So Super Patch is part of my routine. It's everything that I do in the morning when I get up. It's like, you know, I give myself an assessment. This is what I need. I get the appropriate patches, put them on, and just go about my day. And they're nuanced things for me. You know, it's like, wow, that doesn't, you know, and it's like this, I got a little bit more energy today. It's like, you know, it's like, but it's little nuances. It's these little nuances in this little flow, and all of a sudden my body's, it's stabilizing. You know, it's one of those things where I just wouldn't even have been open to this 5 years ago. Like, you look at it and I'm like, hey, how could this even benefit me? What is it? How does it work? All these other things. And the big thing for me is being open to something that's outside the box of normal thinking of like what I would think like therapy would be, or recovery would be, or wellness would be, or health or pain management, all these different aspects that I was so narrow-minded. And once my mind was open to something, that there's something out there that might be different, and then applying it and going, okay, hang on. Like knowing at the end of the day that there's something different, and there's only one thing that I've added or changed in my routine. And that was, I put on Super Patch. And I'm like, okay, well, let me try it another day. And then try it another day. And all of a sudden I'm like 4 or 5 days in, now I'm 7 days in, and I'm like, okay. Fundamentally, you know, when I started the process of getting to where I am now, a friend of mine had asked me, come up and spar with me. And I was like, oh no. And I said, no. I said, there's no way. I said, I haven't sparred in, I don't even know how long. And he says, no, you got to come up and spar with me. I was like, okay. You know, finally he convinces me to go up and spar with him. And I hadn't had a set of boxing gloves on him over a decade. And he says, I need to be hit in the head, right? I was like, oh, okay. You know, kind of one of those things where it's like, but I didn't understand the correlation between when that moment happened, we started sparring. It was this thing inside me that reminded me of who I was and what I'm capable of as a human being, right? And it's that connection again with that piece of me that I forgot I had. When he connected those pieces in me through sparring, I was, oh my God, I totally forgot that I had this drive and all the stuff that I've been through to get to this point. Like, it gets lost. The shame, the guilt, the disappointment, you know, all these things that just wear away over time, you know, that eroded my ability to connect with that part of me. And, you know, the rewiring of everything is just brought that back online, and it's brought a zest and a vigor and, you know, this thirst for life again that I had lost. I think for the first time in a long time, I can honestly say that, you know, I'm okay with me. And it's, if I didn't know how to ask for help because I didn't want anybody to know that I didn't know how to figure it out. Or I didn't know how to go forward. Or I didn't know how to, that I'm just, the ability to ask for help, or the ability to be vulnerable in a sense where, I've always had the ability to communicate, talk, and connect in a certain way, but there's another level to that, and that's that gut honesty about like, hey man, I don't have it figured out. I don't know the answer. The transition for me is actually listening to somebody and then assimilating what they're saying into like, okay, I need to try another path. And this is the path to suggest, I'm going to try it. And I have a couple of close friends that like when all hell breaks loose in my head, they're like, there's no excuse not to call them. Like I'll text something that'll be like, hey, and it'll be like a warning signal, and they'll go like, oh man. And it's like, he knows it's not a text, he knows it's a phone call. And so he'll call and he'll go, why don't you pick in the phone? And the phone becomes I call it the 800-pound phone. Like when you get stuck in these spots, it's like the heaviest thing in the world to pick up and make the phone call, because then somebody's gonna actually say, hey, you're feeling sorry for yourself, get out, or whatever that honesty you need at that moment. So, I have a couple of people that I call them truth tellers. It's given me tools that I didn't have before. It's allowed me to participate in my life at a level that I'm like, okay, this is just the beginning. I had this just clarity of thought. The only difference is putting on a patch and going, okay, here I am more focused. Here I am. I don't have that creak in my knee, or I have this just calmness about me. It was one of those things where I was like, nah, it can't be. Gotta be something else. I must take an extra shot of coffee I didn't realize in the morning or what. And it's like when I boiled everything away and I looked at it, I'm like, it is the patches. That is actually the variable that's changed.